until we get a quorum. And
Yes, sir. We have a regular agenda and a special agenda. We'll start with the regular agenda. Item 1 is a city attorney report and ordinance relative to authorization for the sale of 2 city-owned properties at 2515 South Sycamore and 2528 South Orange Drive.
And this item is scheduled for council on Friday, October 10th.
Can we proceed with general public comment at this time?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So let's have general public comment. I have Suzette Shaw, LA Human Rights Housing Collective. Is that you?
Yes.
How are you? And let's get Thelmy Perez and Wesley Walker Jr. How are you? Please.
Very good, thank you. Respectfully, council members, my name is Suzette Shaw. I am currently living in an SRO, barely getting by, even now. Rental costs has always been an issue for me as a single woman. No matter what my wages, I have never been able to keep up with the cost of rent. Wages do not progressively track with the cost of living, including housing. Also, as a single woman with no dependents, I definitely feel penalized that I am being made to suffer for my status. I have no tax brackets, nor have I ever had any tax brackets. No matter how hard I have worked, no matter how many jobs I have held at one time, no matter how much I have contributed as a tax member, there's always been an issue with trying to basically keep a roof over my head. I am 50 years old. I am not physically in the position to try and work at the same level I did in my younger years. So what is the message that is being sent to constituents? We as Americans constantly talk about the division between the haves and have-not, the disappearance of the middle income and the poor continually being reduced to third world living conditions here in the United States of America. What's the message that is overall being conveyed here? Council members, respectfully, I ask you to repeal any rent increases, eliminate the 3% rate rent increase, raise wages with tax brackets to support those who are at the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay within our time limits, please.
Thank you. Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Thelmy Perez, and I am a coordinator and a community organizer with the LA Human Right to Housing Collective, and I appreciate you taking public comment up front. Let me just say that. So I know that you all are on top of the news, and you probably have seen that UCLA and USC now have both published reports detailing the housing crisis that's happening in Los Angeles, particularly the affordability crisis for Angelenos, and I'm really hoping that this committee will work more so than the former iteration of this committee to address this crisis and to address what is happening for renters in the city of LA. I know both of your districts have high level of renters, and so we're looking for solutions. We're actually looking for you to implement our recommendations as renters and for you to take action, and hopefully for you to allow us to present our recommendations to you here in the Housing Committee in the upcoming weeks or month at least. So that's why we're here. Renters make LA work. Let's make LA work for renters.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wesley Walker, and I live in the city of LA. I live on a fixed income, and here's a frightening fact. This is hot. This is October, scary times. The average Los Angeles renter spend about 30 to 47% of their income just toward rent. We need this housing committee to take action to ease the rent burden and to work with us to implement new measures, or legislate new measures to stop runaway rents and to preserve existing housing, includes rent control and public housing. What I mean by implementing new measures, like I said, we need to implement new legislature to to ensure that the renters are being treated fairly. And the other part is that, instead of giving money to the developers in the public housing sector, we need to take that money and use it wisely to get people off the street and to make sure we take care of LA citizens first, rather than the developers, because they have all the money.
Thank you.
Thank you. Darian James, Leslie, and Adam Rice. Darian James?
Good afternoon.
Hi,
My name's
sir.
Darian James. I'm here speaking one of many. I came in with LA Can. I'm speaking on behalf of all the renters in Los Angeles. Of course, I'm just one voice. I think we all go through the same thing as the economy keeps changing. It's very difficult to continue paying rent if your jobs aren't stable. I personally ran into a situation where I was unable to keep up with my rent on a regular basis, and I fell out of the mainstream, so to speak. And I was fortunate enough that there was a community safety net to catch me. There's a lot of people out there that weren't as fortunate as I am and ended up on the streets, but for whatever reason, I did have money to back me up. But I guess what I'm saying here is that as the housing gets better and better, and the new housing starts to go higher and higher, the rent also goes higher and higher. I don't have a solution to that, but I think that the Housing Committee, I'm sure that you do recognize that, and I hope you would continue to recognize those problems that we all face.
Thank you. Leslie?
Yes, hi. This isn't about me, but I'm going to tell you about me, about my apartment, and a little bit about my owner. For 15 years, I've worked 3 part-time temporary jobs and managed to hold it together with an occasional cost of living increase. My apartment is a 700-square-foot, kind of shabby, rent-controlled apartment. There has been no maintenance on my apartment except for water leaks. No new carpet, no paint, no new appliances in those 17 years. The rent in my neighborhood has increased by 11% in the past year. It's no surprise. It was no surprise when the building owner told me he wanted me to move. He's offered me $3,000, not enough to move and for deposits on a new place. He has told me that he is part of the 1% economically, and he has managed to move out 75% of the people in my building in the past 6 months in order to sell. I have lived there for 17 years, 7 more years than I've lived anywhere else in my life. This is my neighborhood. This is my home. Please save it for me.
Thank you. Adam?
Good morning.
Morning.
One of the main reasons we're here, look, since 1970, the median rent in LA has increased by 175%. Well, wages have not increased at all. We've recently learned that the rent is going to increase 9% over the next 2 years alone. I mean, what we need is this body to put protections in place for us, to put protections in place for 68 some odd percent of your citizens that rent. We have plenty of recommendations for you to get started. I mean, we really make LA work. We are LA. LA is a renter city. So what we're asking is for you to take a look at our recommendations and to implement them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ignacio Aguas.
My name is Ignacio Aguas, and I'm a member of LA Can. It is October, and what is spookier than goblins and demons, LA housing crisis. As a renter, I have experienced it. Last June, I got a $72 increase on my rent. Even though I'm very lucky that I am on Section 8, those $72 could go to another renter applying for Section 8. Like the majority of Angelenos, I need you to take action so that I can continue to live and work in LA. Renters make LA work. Let's make LA work for renters. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that closes our public comment. Welcome, Senator Price.
Thank you, Senator.
We do a roll call to determine quorum?
No, that's not needed.
Note the obvious. Okay. We have 3 items for consent. Are you prepared to
I
move the consent?
so move.
Okay.
And
so
Mr.
moved.
Chair, I've already read the first item. We would just clarify that for the first item, we recommend that you adopt both the ordinance and the motion. And then quickly, item 2 is a HCID report relative to authorization to release an RFP for citywide fair housing services. Item 3 is an HCID and CAO report relative to appropriating grant funds for the lead hazard reduction grant and healthy homes production grant.
Excellent. Okay.
So move.
So moved. So be the order.
And for item 3, that would be the recommendations in the CAO report.
Yes, correct.
That concludes the agenda for the regular meeting.
Thank you.
So now for the special meeting agenda, item 4 is a motion, City of Price, relative to instructing the law firm of Byrne & Nixon, the HCID, general manager, and other appropriate departments to provide a briefing relative to the current ADA litigation and related matters. Mr. Chair, this item is a closed session item.
Got it. So this is a closed session matter. So if you are not with with our attorney or with us, you have an opportunity to get a little break.
If not on this item, you have to step out of the room, it's closed session. Consent parties and the appropriate attorneys.
Will public comment be taken?
We just had public comment. I don't know if we have any more public comment.
We have no general public comments for, we have no general public comment for the special meeting. We have public comment on items 4 and 5. Did you want to take the public comment for 4 after you return from closed session?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Then also for the record, the committee is recessing into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A to confer with its legal counsel relative to the case entitled Independent Living Center of Southern California versus City of Los Angeles. Okay. We are now back in open session,
Okay.
and the committee would need to indicate what action is being taken on item number 4.
Yes. On item 4, we receive and file, and
Yes, sir, receive and file.
it's right here. So item 4, we note and file and ask to agendize for Tuesday, 10/14.
Okay. And also, we have public comment on item number 4.
Yes, we do. We have Autumn Elliott. Did she come back in the room? Autumn, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm happy to hear from you.
In a minute, sure. I'm Autumn Elliott from Disability Rights California. We represent the plaintiffs in this case, and are concerned that this is a case that should settle and isn't. The city's liability is clear, as is the history of the Housing Department's problems with oversight of federal requirements. There's a number of Office of Inspector General reports from HUD finding that the Housing Department did not exercise appropriate authority over its subrecipients. In the city's own witness has testified that the city was using the wrong standard in plan reviews and inspections. In the case itself, the district court has rejected nearly every position the city has taken. And in conclusion, we believe it's in no one's interest for the case to continue as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Okay, that's it.
Yes, no other cards on this item.
Brings us to item number 5, which is an adopted budget recommendation relative to instructing the Housing Department to report to the committee regarding the resources necessary to monitor covenants and recommendations to be included in the city's legislative program to change the requirements and close loopholes used to improperly move into affordable housing units.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Once again, Rushmore Cervantes. Just very quickly, this is just an oral report. We'll report back in 30 days with a more comprehensive report. But again, this was an item that was brought up in the Budget and Finance hearings, and the concern about what resources we would need for monitoring covenants. So just to give it a point of reference, going back approximately 1 year ago, we had 20,000 covenants to monitor. With the merger or the elimination of the redevelopment agency, we inherited an additional 23,000 covenants that we have to monitor. So it's the task has grown exponentially. When we had just the 20,000 covenants, we had a total of 12 staffing authorities as well as a contractor, Urban Futures, to provide providing most of the field work on behalf of the department. We are just now going through the CRA properties, all the files, and so far we've addressed about 20% of those CRA properties, meaning that we're starting to monitor those as well. The idea or the plan for the department was to report back through the budget process to request additional resources to be able to ask for staffing and funding to be able to support the additional resources and staffing that's needed to support the additional 23,000 covenants that we've inherited. Some of that could potentially come from the revenue that derives from the CRA loan portfolio. Others, it may have to come from some other location. Obviously, we've had other discussions about sources of funding for covenant monitoring, but we're going to be reporting back with some recommendations through the budget process. But we can, in the interim, report back, like I said, within 30 days with a report on that. I will say also, relative to the second piece of the motion was what recommendations we have legislatively to make some requirement changes to enhance the ability of the city to monitor these covenants. And I will say that we've been working closely with the city attorney's office, one of which we've implemented or working on right now involves verification of income with students. So as an example, we have students that will occupy low-income housing units, and they do qualify, but the fact of the matter is that we know that they're not the ones paying the rent. So we're adding language into the covenant language to require a question to be placed in there that would state, are you being used for someone else's tax purposes as a tax write-off? And if you are, then we need that person's tax returns to be able to determine eligibility. That's going to save us a lot right there as far as just addressing students that are occupying those units when they're really reserved for true working families. We're also looking at enhancing our ability to add additional enforcement to property owners that do not cooperate or do not comply with those covenants. Right now, it's basically stern letters that are sent out, and basically after that, we have to refer to the city attorney's office, and they'll have to file a lawsuit. We're also looking at potential ways to perhaps add a penalty for non-performance as well. That's certainly something that's been covered in other ordinances that the city enforces, and this may be something to incentivize property owners to ensure that they are adhering to the covenants that, again, because we hear over and over again the limited amount of affordable housing, this is certainly we as a city need to make sure that those units we have either financed or granted through a density bonus, that they are insured, we ensure that they're actually available for ADA compliant individuals or low-income individuals or both.
Those weren't structured into the agreements in the beginning?
Not the penalties, and nor was the language relative to the students and whether they can be held or accounted for as a dependent.
You know, it seems to me that with students is kind of a tricky thing, but the question of penalties for noncompliance would be something that we would structure into the agreements. It's basically a breach of contract, and we should have that structured in there.
Excellent, exactly, and I certainly agree, and that'll be part of our report back with some recommendations on that fee structure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Or I shouldn't say a fee, penalty structure.
Penalty? Yes. Thank you. Autumn? What more can we do?
Thank you. We wanted to comment because the item referenced a report regarding assurance that accessible units were being made available to those with needs, and just wanted to highlight for the committee's attention that the problem goes beyond people in accessible units who don't need the features of those units. The accessible units need to exist in the first place, and to the extent that they don't, they need to be retrofitted, and the city needs to adopt policies to ensure that the problem doesn't reoccur, as well as requiring housing providers to ensure that accessible units, once they're there, be marketed to people who need the accessible features of those units, and that people who are waiting for those units actually get them. At this point, there are folks who are homeless or in institutions or in inaccessible units, and it's a situation that needs to be remedied. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other matters before us?
No other matters before us. What action will the committee be taking on this item?
We're going to adopt this and move it to council. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, did you want to direct the Housing Department to report on this item, or?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, direct HSID to report.
Okay. No further items on the desk.
Is that it? Okay. Motion to...
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.